Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's very an honor to be with you virtually. Hopefully, sometimes in the future, also in present, and discussing with you these important issues of climate finance. I will talk for 10 minutes in addition and supplementing what has just been said on the international legal framework for climate finance, which of course is at the heart, as you all know, of COP29 next week and the following week in Baku. And the background to political development in this regard is not too promising, but I'm not pessimistic. Let's keep and stay optimistic. But you all followed the development last week and this weekend on the Conference of the Parties with regard to the Convention on Biodiversity. And as you all know, it unfortunately ended abruptly without a result, and because of our issue today, because of finance. Biodiversity finance, climate finance, there's a lot of similarities in this regard. And as you probably followed the news, it was a clash between the Global South and the Global North with regard to the question how and by whom and in which dimension we should finance this biodiversity, second biggest environmental challenge next to climate change. So we have to see. I don't know whether it's a good or a bad sign what we witnessed just last week, but we should stay optimistic for Baku. So what is this is what I'm going to discuss with you with, as I said, about 10 minutes. I'm going through the provisions that are the more concrete legal background of climate finance, what will be discussed in Baku next week, and also some additional thoughts, namely on the question how to solve the issue, who is going to, who's responsible for climate finance. I said already, and we all know, climate finance is the main topic in Baku. It will be the climate finance COP. That is clear, and we have already a lot of diplomatic, political, and also scientific initiatives in order to solve the challenge ahead. It's a very complex issue also in terms of negotiations and how to conduct negotiations. I can, of course, here only touch upon some very basic aspects of the complex picture. The background for climate finance is, of course, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change that has already within it, you see it here on the slide, an obligation of climate finance based on the overall and most important principle of common but differentiated responsibilities. As you might know, in the old days, under the Framework Convention, at the starting of the entire process, we had a strict differentiation between the so-called annex countries that were then only a limited number of countries being obliged for financial assistance. The second most important development then was COP15 in Copenhagen. Even though as such COP15 was more or less a failure, there was at least a result with regard to issues of climate finance, and it was the issue of 100 billion US dollars per year up to until 2020 for climate finance. This was these obligations on climate finance were put on a new ground with the Paris Agreement, making the financial support of all the issues of climate change an obligation of all parties, with a certain differentiation, of course, between developing and developed countries. Article 2, Paris Agreement, and Article 9 are the decisive provisions in this regard. not going into detail because of time constraints. Important is that the 100 billion US dollars per year obligation has been confirmed, and it was agreed upon to have a new goal for collective mobilization beginning next year. And that is why this year in Baku we will discuss this. As you probably know, we have reached the goal of 100 billion US dollars per year only last year, or this or last year, somewhere in between. So the other way around, this goal has been failed to reach for several years actually, which of course was not a good development for climate finance as such. And it shows already how complicated the issue is. Just one aspect with regard to the statistics and the counting, it is to a large extent unclear on what to add all to climate finance domestically and internationally, as we until today have no comprehensive and conclusive definition of a climate finance as such. This is in addition to what has been said with regard to the domestic legal and practical framework. This is one challenge really. We do not know and how to count climate finance and what is all included, private and public. Anyway, what is, I would say, clear is that the challenge ahead is way bigger in terms of money than what we saw so far. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change estimates that at least we have a challenge of bigger than 6 times greater than the current level of climate finance that is needed in order to face all the challenges and to cope with them of climate change ahead. This is, however you want to count, as I said, IPCC said 6 times, UN UNCTAD even says more. We are discussing something of 6 trillion US dollars until 2030, and that is to say at least 600 billion a year, as again currently it's 100 billion a year, probably even more. And that is the challenge we have, and it indicates already how far-reaching the Baku, the COP29 is, and how complicated, because it's a lot of money, negotiations are and will be. What are the key elements that are at stake and shape the current discussion, the political and diplomatic discussion? It's quantity. It's the question, who are contributors, the time frame, the covered themes, the scope of climate finance, the quality of finance, and of course issues of transparency. I cannot touch upon all of them. Let me just highlight 2 and go a little deeper into that. That is, which countries should contribute, and what is the relationship between the global south and the global north with regard to climate finance obligations. The background for this is common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities that, as I already indicated, is a basic theme and a basic legal principle since the beginning of the international efforts, namely under the United Nations Framework Convention. This is indicated also in the Paris Agreement, and domestically we have quite some jurisprudence, follows up on what Justice just said on climate change obligations, and also common but differentiated responsibilities, as probably, at least in my opinion, already by now customary international law, even though of course in a very broad definition, but as such the principle as such I would argue is customary international law. We have a bit more concrete aspects in this regard by the advisory opinion of May this year on climate change and international law of the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea. It's a very important advisory opinion. It is the first we will see, as you probably know, an advisory opinion by the International Court of Justice. Sometimes in the future, we have already human rights international court decisions, namely by the European Court of Human Rights. We will see an Inter-American Court of Human Rights decision. So the International Tribunals for the Law of the Sea is the first international court that has discussed climate change. And an aspect within the advisory opinion, an important aspect, is indeed financial assistance with regard to principle of common but differentiated responsibility. The court, the tribunal explicitly refers to the Paris Agreement and takes the content, so to speak, of the Paris and the United Framework Convention into interpreting the Law of the Seas provision. Important is what the tribunal said on the obligations of, among others, financial support of developing countries in their efforts towards coping with climate change and fighting climate change. The tribunal, as you see, explicitly says that scientific, technical, educational, and other assistance to developing countries is an important aspect with regard to climate change, and an aspect that is part of the overall goal of a just and equitable international economic order, as the overall thing we are talking about. And it also refers in this regard to the financial capability of developing countries and financial assistance in this regard. So we do have some court language judgments here that might help us. That, however, doesn't answer the question. I'm coming to my last point. Who is obliged to support and to contribute to climate finance? Of course, to a large extent, it's developed countries for several reasons, for capability reasons, for historical reasons. But the big question is, what about the big group of developing countries? And as you might know, we are legally not differentiating within the group of developing countries. We only differentiate between least developed and developing countries, but in the big group of developing countries, we are not differentiating legally. And that leads to a situation that we have rather small developing countries in the same legal setting as huge developing countries, Brazil, China, and other countries. And that is one of the issues to discuss. Is that really what we want, to have all of those countries within one basket? Or do we need more graduation, as it is called? Do we need more differentiated responsibility also within that big group of developing countries? I would say yes, and two arguments. First, we have already some indications in this regard in the Paris Agreement. If you look at Article 2 and Article 9 on aspects of who is financing, has an obligation to finance on what, there is a certain overlap, and you can see that probably certain developing countries have already climate finance obligation under Paris. And secondly, we have in other areas of international law, international economic law, also a development in this regard of more differentiating in the large group of developing countries. The agreement on fisheries subsidies within the World Trade Organization has some language in this regard, talking about not only about differentiated responsibilities, but also about appropriate and effective special and differentiated treatment for developing countries. And this appropriate and effective indicates that within the group of developing countries, we may differentiate with regard to technical financial obligations. So I can only end with questions and challenges, not so many answers, because they depend to a large extent on diplomatic and political negotiations. But we see the challenges, and hopefully, and let's cross our fingers, we see some positive results coping with these challenges in Baku at COP29. Thank you very much.